Welcome back to the Date with Confidence podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the 7 easy to ignore red flags I'm no longer available. Now, this has come from a lot of reflection and retrospection. Is that a word? Retrospection? Oh, I don't know. It's coming from reflection over the last year where I've fully embraced my dating era. And a few of these red flags I kind of knew when they happened. I was like, okay, this person's not for me. And some of them have been a bit more, I've thought about them quite a bit after the event has happened. And that's why I've called them easy to ignore red flags, because they're very subtle. They're not like the big love bombing or being secretive or I don't know, teasing you or whatever it is. They're quite, I think they're quite subtle, and they're things that I definitely either didn't notice or actively ignored in my 20s. Whereas now I'm in my 30s, they're things that are really important to me and things that I'm just no longer available for. And from now on, which I've actively been putting in place this past year, when these things happen, I'm like, okay, no, I'm done now. I'm leaving this situation. And the ones that I'm going to share are a mixture of what's happened over dating the last year, and then I think there's 1 or 2 that have been replicated in pretty much every relationship I've ever been in. And now in my 30s, I'm like, yeah, I'm not here for this anymore. So hopefully these will be things for you to think about as well if you haven't thought about them before, or maybe you've been uncertain about whether these are red flags or not. But this is my personal experience and things that I think are really important that we acknowledge as red flags so that we can ensure we're not settling for the wrong person and we're keeping our relationship standards high to what we want. So all the things in this list, these aren't part of my standards. These are things that I'm actively moving away from, and I've actively chosen I don't want to date someone that does these things because of the work that I did to raise my relationship standards. After my last big breakup, I wrote the lesson on it for the confidence course 2 years ago, and then I revisited my relationship standards. I actually went through this module of the confidence course myself again, so I redid my own work, which is kind of how I came to the conclusion as well. It wasn't the deciding factor, but I'd been thinking about coming to the conclusion of ending things with a guy that I was seeing, and then an event happened that I was like, this has confirmed things for me. I'm not available for this. So I think this is really, I think this is work that we all need to be doing in terms of raising your relationship standards and deciding what you're no longer available for and what you are available for, because it also makes it easier to walk away when you realise that someone isn't meeting your standards. And it is perfectly okay for you to have standards. It does not mean you are high maintenance. It does not mean that you are picky. It does not mean that you are, what's the other thing that people call you? It doesn't mean you're full of yourself, or I can't think of the word that I'm trying to look for, but essentially you're allowed to have standards, and the sooner you get clear on your standards, the sooner you'll be able to date more confidently and you'll be able to walk away from what isn't serving you. This is a very long introduction. Let's just get into the episode. Welcome to the Date with Confidence podcast, a place to come for dating advice, support, and stories that'll either fill you with hope or relief that your dating experience wasn't as bad as it could have been, with practical episodes that'll provide you with easy to implement tips to help you feel confident AF on your next date, alongside lighthearted catch-ups where your host Rebecca, that's me by the way, shares her own experience dating after 4 years of the single life. You are guaranteed to end each episode feeling less alone in your dating struggles, empowered to never settle again, and confident that the best is yet to come. And if it all falls to shit, there's a special first season dedicated to breakups. You are welcome, my friend. Subscribe, review, and share with your single friends. So the first one is the way that they speak about an ex or other people they've dated. Now, the reason that I've put this in here as an easy to ignore one is because there are different levels to this. So you have the standard, like, she was a psycho, she was crazy, like all that kind of very obvious, very obvious hate or anger or resentment towards an ex. That's a very obvious red flag when someone calls their ex a psycho, because chances are the person has behaved a certain way because of how they've been treated, right? Not in all cases, but in the majority of cases. Whereas there are more subtle ways that aren't as easy to pick up on as red flags. So one example I've got here is I went on a date with someone and they were talking about the fact that we were talking about dating in general and dates that we'd been on, and they were talking about the fact that they had dated this, they'd been on a date with a girl or woman, really, really liked her, agreed to a second date, and then something happened in this person's personal life, so they cancelled the second date. And the response that he said was, well, she got a meal out of me. Now that might not seem like a massive thing, but it was the way that it was like, she got something out of me, I didn't get anything back. I was expecting the second date, I didn't get my second date, but she got this out of me. It was quite an not full on aggressive, but the way that it was said, it's that she got something out of me and I didn't get anything in return. And I don't believe in owing someone something just because they took me on a date, and neither should you. Like, you don't owe anyone anything when they have taken you on a date and when they have chosen to pay for you. So when they have made the decision as a grown adult that they want to pay for your meal, you don't then owe them something because they decided to do that. That was their decision, that was their choice. And if they are doing that from an expectation that they will get something in return, whether that's a second date, whether that's sex, whether that's a relationship, whatever it is, that's a massive red flag right there. So that's one of them, the more subtle way that somebody talks about an ex or someone that they have dated. The second easy to ignore red flag that I've put on this list is men specifically. So if you're a man listening to this, then this is something to be conscious of. But for a woman, if a man speaks, it's really the way that a man speaks about his female relatives or friends. So I went on a date with a guy and we were talking about his sister, and he was saying that his sister was, I think she was older than him, but she wasn't dating anyone. She was single because she's on the bigger side. They were the words that he used, or around like that kind of thing. And it was something along the, he was like, she's on the bigger side. Now, if a man can talk like that about his sister because she doesn't look the shape that magazines tell us we're supposed to look, or social media tells us we're supposed to look, then what the fuck's going to happen if you're with this guy and you get pregnant and obviously you put on a ton of weight? Or what happens if as you age, you naturally put on weight? Or what happens if your body changes shape during your relationship? Are they suddenly going to dump you? Is their expectation going to be that your body needs to look a certain way for them to be with you? Like, the fuck is that all about? This was like a massive, not a massive red flag because obviously it's a subtle one, but this was a bit of a red flag to me. And a lot of people, it wouldn't be a red flag because it is that subtle. He's not necessarily been nasty as such, but to say that the reason that your sister is single is because she because she looks bigger than someone else, or because she weighs more, is utterly ridiculous. And it's really quite misogynistic. Is misogynistic the word that I want to use? I don't know whether it is or not, but it's not a nice thing, is it? Like, I would not want to date someone who believed that women had to be a certain shape or size to be worthy of being in a relationship. I think that's what it boils down to. Like, you accept me for how my body looks, whether it changes, whether it stays the same, whether it gets skinnier, whether it gets fatter, like whatever. my body looks like, you accept me for who I am, just as I will accept you if you are my partner as you are. And then the next one is like very much in this theme of the way that they talk about other people. So how they talk about strangers or people walking down the streets and the judgment that they make about people that they don't know. I think when somebody is overly judgmental of someone who isn't the same as them, to me that screams closed-minded, not available for other people's opinions or thoughts or cultures or religions or anything like that. Like, for example, I was dating someone and we were going along in the car and there was a girl taking a photo of herself in a shop window, and the response was, "Oh my god, what a fucking influencers, what an idiot." And I was like, "What?" And he was just like, "Well, look at her, like taking a photo in the window, what a fucking idiot. Like all these influencers nowadays on social media, like they don't work hard," or something along those lines. And I was just like, you literally have no clue who this person is. You know nothing about them, yet the spite coming out of your mouth towards them it's such an unattractive trait, and it's just so unnecessary. Like, I am very much a person who is like, let people live their lives doing whatever they want. Obviously, there are parameters around that in terms of like, as long as they're not hurting people, killing people, violent people, that kind of thing. Like, you know what I'm talking about. But if someone wants to take a photo of themselves in a shop window and put it on social media, what the fuck has it got to do with you? Like, how does that impact your life in any way? How can you have such a spiteful reaction to someone who is literally just living their life? And how someone talks about other people in that way, who talks about strangers, as I said, talks about strangers in the street or online, like someone who is that judgmental of people, I see that again as like a really subtle red flag. Like, it's easy to ignore it, but if you can talk about somebody so spitefully that you have no clue who they are, then how are you going to talk about people that you do know? And again, like what's it got to do with you? Why can't you just let other people live? Like, I think that's quite a toxic trait to have. The fourth easy to ignore red flag that I have in my list is when their stories don't match up. Now, this is an obvious red flag, right? Like, this is an obvious thing. If they're telling you one thing and then doing something else, that's really fucking obvious. But we don't always pick up on it the first time it happens. And I think especially when you're in the stage of like dating someone new, it can take a little while for you to realise, or for you to even be in a situation where their stories don't marry up. So for example, I was dating someone, and I think on one of the first dates, or even before we'd gone on a date, they told me that they weren't on dating apps. Like they didn't go on dating apps, or they hadn't been on dating apps for a while. But then a little while later, like a couple of weeks or a couple of dates in, they said that they'd deleted their dating apps when we'd started dating. And I was just like, because they'd said something about being on a dating app, and I was like, "Oh, I thought you said you weren't on dating apps." And it was, "Oh no, I deleted them when we started dating." And it was like a really subtle thing, but you know, when you're like, well, why did you not just tell me that in the first place? Why did you tell me that you're not on dating apps, but then actually it turns out you are, and now you've just said that? And there was another occasion where someone that I was dating said that they only smoked occasionally. Now, I used to be a smoker. I quit, I think it'd be 9 years in October. So it's a very long time ago that I quit. And having spent the last 3 years watching my granddad be on oxygen 24/7 because of severe COPD from all the years that he smoked, I do not, like, one of my standards for myself and my relationship is that I'm not with a smoker, because I can't, like, it's not that I can't stand it, like I still get cravings for it now, but I don't like the smell of it. I don't want to be with someone that smokes because of the health reasons. I don't want to grow old with someone that I'm then going to have to look after because of something they have specifically done to their body. And if I have kids, I don't want my partner to be smoking. Like, it's a no from me. It's a hard no from me. So when this person said they only smoked occasionally when drinking, I was kind of like borderline with it. I was like, do you know what? We'll give them a chance. It's once in a blue moon. I'm not going to be around it. We'll think about it. And then it turned out that when I spent time with them, they were smoking like every day. And that bothered me again because it was like, you've told me one thing in the early dating process. It's like, you've told me one thing initially, but then as we're getting to know each other, it turns out that wasn't the truth. So what else are you lying about? So they're only subtle things, but when their stories don't match up, I think it's really important, because if you can't be truthful about the tiny things, then how am I going to trust you being truthful about big things? Another easy to ignore red flag, and I've done this in like every relationship, like I shit you not, pretty much every single relationship, when you're the one making all the effort, but they only want to see you when it's convenient for them. So I would always be the one that'd be like, I'll come to you, I'll do what you want me to do, I'll be where you want me to be, like I'll get the bus to you, I'll drive to yours at the middle of the night, or I don't know, whatever it is, like I'll make all the effort, I'll organise the dates, like I'll put in all of the effort. But then they only want to put in the effort when it's convenient, or when they decide that they want to. And again, these can be really subtle things in the early dating process. It's not so much like when you're in a relationship longer term, that can be really obvious, and it can just be a case of, I don't know, maybe you need a bit more open communication about what your expectations are. But in the early stages, especially when you've just started dating someone and it's always you saying, well, when am I next going to see you? Or making the effort. Or for example, the guy that I was saying at the start of the year, we went for a whole month without seeing each other because I didn't have any weekends free to go to his house and stay with him. But at no point did he put in the effort to say, let's go on a date, let's meet up halfway, let's go out for dinner, like let's do something that doesn't involve you coming to my house, let's speak on the phone. Like he didn't want to speak on the phone, and he would just not suggest seeing me at all. And I'm not okay with that. Like I'm not okay with being the one that puts in the effort. I want someone who is so certain about me. They are like, I've booked us a table for here tonight, or next week let's go and do this, or oh, you're not free at the weekend, okay, let's meet up for drinks after work one evening. Whatever it is, like put in the effort. I want to be part of an equal team where we're both not, it's not about prioritizing each other, because I think it's important that you prioritize yourself in a relationship, just in terms of like self-care and making sure your needs are met and that kind of stuff, but prioritizing each other equally, so that you're both making the effort to plan dates, to do things together, to cook dinner. And then when it goes into like a longer term relationship, they should be putting in as much effort to do the things like chores, like shit like that, you know? So I think in the early stages, it's important to recognize these really subtle red flags, because what might seem really subtle in the early days can become something so much bigger in a relationship when you're longer term. The penultimate one on my list, I love that word and I don't use it often enough. The penultimate thing that I've got on this list here is the way that they respond to your no. And I've got a few examples here. So if they get defensive, so if you say no about something and they get defensive and they're like, I was dating this guy and he asked me for a photo and I said no. And he was like, oh, go on, like, and I was just like, no, like, I don't send photos to people that I'm dating. I think this is even before we'd gone on a date. I was like, no, I don't send photos to people that I haven't met. And he was just like, oh, well, I didn't mean a cheeky one. I meant just, I just meant a normal photo, which I talk about more in the episode He Lied to Me. which I'll share that in the show notes, that you can go back and listen to that for the full story. But essentially he wanted me to send a photo, and then he was just like, oh, well, I didn't mean a cheeky one. It was like, you don't need to be defensive about it. Like, I don't care what you meant. I don't send photos to people that I haven't met. Or if they tell you you're overreacting. So I've been in countless scenarios where someone has asked me to do something or said something and I've said no, and then they've told me that I'm overreacting, I'm making a scene, I'm being dramatic. Again, these are things that I didn't recognise as much when I was in my 20s, because I was just like, oh, well, they just want me to compromise, if you like. But it really shows a lack of respect when someone can't hear your no and accept it. Then another way of the way that they respond to your no is things like repeatedly pushing against it to try and get you to change your mind. I had the same conversation 3, 4, 5 times with the guy that I was seeing at the start of the year, where he asked me for, where he asked something of me and I was like, no, and I repeatedly said no. And then it got to the point where he asked me again and I was just like, I've said no so many times. These are all the reasons why I've said no. And he came back and was like, oh, well, I was just joking. And I was like, but it's not a joke though, is it? Because I've said no to you 4 times now. I've repeatedly asked you to respect my no, and you haven't. You have repeatedly said, oh, but can you? Oh, but can you? And you're not. And then we had a bit of a discussion around that, because it really shows a lack of respect. And whether he tells himself in his mind that it's not a big deal and it's only a joke and I'm only messing around, when you're on the receiving end, and when you have been on the receiving end as a woman, I'm sure you understand as well, when you have repeatedly had your no ignored time and time again, it gets very frustrating. It is not a joke. So when you're dating someone and they can't accept your no, it is a red flag. Even if they mask it with, oh, I was only messing. Like, no, my no is a no. If you don't respect that, you're a red flag. I'm out. I am not available for it anymore. If you cannot respect my no, you do not respect me. Therefore, I don't want to be with you. I refuse to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't have mutual respect for me. I feel like I got a bit ranty then. Okay, the last one that I have in this list is how they respond to you when you are sharing something vulnerable. So if you're sharing your feelings, and this isn't about them gaslighting you or them telling you that you're being dramatic, there's more subtle ways than that. And I've got another example. I was dating someone and I shared that I'd had a week where I was just feeling really rejected by life in general. I'd had stuff going on in my business. I'd had a situation where I felt rejected by a friend. I'd felt rejected by the person that I was seeing because I hadn't had much communication with them during the week. And that wasn't about them. That was about how I was feeling. I know that I'm sensitive to rejection because of the ADHD. So I knew that the week was about me. It wasn't about them. And I shared quite openly that I'd had a week where I was just struggling, really. I just felt like I was rejected from all angles of my life. And I'd found it quite hard. And I said it quite openly and quite vulnerably. And I said, look, it's nothing to do with you, but this is just how I have felt this week. And we had that conversation. And then instead of them proactively making the effort to not make me feel so rejected or to reassure me, they turned the TV on and started watching telly. And I was just in a space where I was like, I have been really open and honest with you and really vulnerable about how I'm feeling. I've shared that I'm feeling rejected, and your response was to turn the TV on, which is a micro rejection from where I'm sitting. Instead of listening to me and saying, okay, how can I make you feel better? Or I'm sorry that you felt that way. Or do you want to carry on talking? Shall we go and do something? The TV got turned on and then they started watching telly. So things like that, when someone responds to you sharing your feelings by not listening or caring or acknowledging or going on to do the thing that you've just shared was upsetting for you, that is a red flag to me, because that shows that you're not emotionally mature or emotionally available enough to be able to have that conversation with me. And that's a big deal. Again, like, that was a really subtle example in what I'd consider the early stages of dating. How is that going to look 6 months, 12 months, 3 years down the line when I'm sharing something open with you and your response is to essentially ignore me or go and do the thing that I've just shared that's upsetting me? Like, I'm not available for that. I want someone who can have these emotionally vulnerable conversations with me. Just like I'm saying, I'm obviously making this all about me because this is my fucking podcast and it is my life experience. But that is how I would respond in a relationship if my partner came to me and shared something open and honest and vulnerable to me. I wouldn't then be like, I'm going to shut you out now because I don't want to deal with this and I'm just going to switch on the TV, right? Like, it works both ways. These are my standards and my expectations for the relationship that I want to be in, because I know that I will deliver the same standards and expectations to the partner that I am with. I hold myself to high standards, and because I hold myself to high standards, I expect the person that I am dating and the person that I'm in a relationship with to have those high standards for themselves, and I expect that of them. So I hope that this has maybe helped you think about things in a different way. Maybe it's helped you to recognise some red flags that you weren't aware of before. Maybe there are some things that you disagree with. I'm always open for discussion. So if you want to contribute your stories to the Date with Confidence podcast, if you want to respond to this episode, if you have red flags that you want to share or things that you want to discuss, then you can go to datewithconfidencepodcast.com/contribute. You can share your stories, your icks, dating tips, whatever you want to share. Get involved. We have a community episode on the second week of every month. I would love to hear from you. I've also got a whole episode on other red flags, like is it a red flag or not, which I'll link in the show notes, plus the episode that I said that I would link before, which I've obviously forgotten about. When I go back and edit this, I'll remember what episode it was, and I'll be able to link that in the show notes for you as well. So go listen to those, and thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Date with Confidence podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Subscribe, rate and review, and share it with your single friends.